My wife told me. He makes me feel desired and you don't. After using my money to live a double life with a man she said I shouldn't worry about, and mocking me for trusting her. I'm 31 years old and was married to Clara for 4 years. We met when I was 27 and she was 25. I was working in software engineering, starting to climb professionally, and she had just graduated from design school. She was an incredibly creative person, full of energy, always willing to talk to anyone, very different from me. I am quieter, more reserved. I am not the center of attention, but if I tell you I am with you, it is because I truly am. I do not raise my voice. I do not throw tantrums. I simply do the best I can every day and expect those around me to do the same. That is how I grew up. That is what I saw in my parents, and that is what I tried to replicate in my life. Back then, I found Clara fascinating. She talked about art, ideas, places to visit, and seeing her get excited about those things, I loved it. We started dating quickly. I would pick her up after her shifts at a coffee shop. I would bring her food when she was up to her neck in projects. I did not do it to score points. I did it because I wanted to. Within a year we moved in together, and the next year we got married. I proposed to her on a trip to Colorado, in a quiet place by a lake she loved. No fireworks or public events, just her, me, and that intimate moment. She cried. She said yes, that she had never felt so safe with anyone before. Before the wedding, my lawyer suggested we get a prenuptial agreement. It was not that I did not trust her, but I already had a small apartment, some savings, and a career that was starting to bear fruit. I wanted to protect us in case life got complicated. She did not object. She said she understood. We signed it without drama. There was a clear and direct clause in Section 7. If one of the parties cheated and it was proven, they would lose all rights to the shared assets. Gifts, house, car, everything. It was not a threat, just an agreement. If you cross that line, it is over. She read it, signed it, smiled, and said, "We are never going to need that." And I believed her. I have seen smart men lose everything by confusing love with blind trust. It was not cynicism, it was foresight. For me, that agreement was not pessimism, it was a declaration. If I give you my loyalty, it is total. But if you betray that, you do not just lose the relationship, you lose access. Not out of spite, but out of principle. And this is where Marcos comes in. He was her best friend from college. I met him at our engagement party, tall, with that air of a second-rate philosopher, a smug smile, always hovering as if he had a secret. I did not hate him at first, but something about the way he looked at her made me uncomfortable, as if he was playing harmless, but you could tell he was not. He hugged her for too long. He knew too many intimate things. He had anecdotes with her that I had never heard. And yes, I understand that people have history, but this guy never went away. Even after the marriage, he was still present. I tried to stay calm. I did not want to seem like the insecure husband who gets upset because his wife has male friends, so I let it slide over and over again, but I would be lying if I said it did not bother me. He would text her at night, comment on her posts as if he were still the protagonist of her life, and the worst part was that she allowed it. When I confronted her, she said I was exaggerating. "It is just Marcos. He has been here since before you." That hurt, but I swallowed it. Over time, their closeness became more evident. He would show up at family events. She would invite him without consulting me. He was at her mother's birthday. He sat next to her at my sister's baby shower. I would look around and think, at what point did we agree that this guy would be part of our lives as if we were three? I would ask her if she did not find it strange, and she would just laugh. "Do not be so serious," she would say. I stopped arguing. Not because I agreed, but because I understood that respect is not negotiated forever. There is a silence that men adopt when we stop trying to convince. We just observe. She did not notice, but I was no longer her husband. I was an analyst. From the heart, I moved on to the hardware. I pulled away, but she changed too. Clara was no longer affectionate. She was always tired. She did not want to talk about her day. She said she was staying late at the studio for projects that were not reflected anywhere. I knew she was distancing herself. I just did not know how much. At first, I did not snoop. I really wanted to trust her. I tried to ignore that feeling in my stomach, but the more I tried to act as if everything was fine, the more invisible I became. Like a roommate, not her partner. The final blow came one night. She came home smelling of a cologne that was not mine, and it was not a faint or accidental scent. It was strong, obvious. I asked her, containing my voice. She immediately became defensive. She shouted that I was delusional, that it was my imagination. I did not respond. I did not argue. I just said, okay. And that is when everything changed. Something in me broke. From that night on, I stopped fighting for us. Because you cannot save something that the other person has already thrown away. It is just that she had not communicated it to me yet. So I withdrew emotionally, not out of spite, but in silence. I stopped talking so much and started observing. I took mental notes, saved messages, paid attention to details I had previously ignored. She thought I was finally giving her space, that I was becoming distant, and yes, but not in the way she thought. I was actually preparing for the end. I work in technology. It is not difficult for me to analyze data. I did not become a hacker, but let us just say I knew how to back up information without creating a scandal. iCloud, shared calendars, phone plan GPS. She never noticed that. Most people do not. I checked her calendar and saw several nights of work at the studio that did not coincide with anything she posted on her professional account. No new clients or supply orders appeared, just empty spaces. Then I found a large number of deleted messages in the backups of Clara's phone. Because yes, even if something is deleted, it always leaves a trace if you know where to look. She was no longer texting Marcos under his real name. She had changed his contact to things like Sophie Yoga, among others. But the messages were not exactly the kind of things you would write to someone you do yoga with. Unless, of course, Sophie was interested in my wife in a way that had little to do with mats or poses. I did not jump to conclusions with just one message. I let a week pass. Day after day, I found phrases like, I miss your hands, or I cannot stop thinking about last night. There were also photos. Nothing too graphic, but revealing enough to make it clear they were not exactly at the studio. And no, I did not even get angry. I cannot really explain it. It was like watching a movie you had already seen, where you know perfectly well how it is going to end. So I just let it play out. In those days, I gathered everything and created a private folder. I placed the messages, images, and logs there with their respective dates. I password protected the file and saved a copy on an encrypted drive just in case. During all that time, Clara behaved as if nothing was wrong. She complained about her clients, showed me paint samples, asked if we wanted to order takeout. I just nodded and asked about her day as if I were acting in a play where I already knew the ending. One night we were on the couch. She was looking through some color catalogs, and I was pretending to browse on my phone. Then, without looking at her, I threw out a question casually, like it was nothing. Hey, who was Sophie? She paused for just a second and then let out a forced laugh. What? In your messages? The yoga one. Her gaze sharpened. Why are you reading my messages? I shrugged. I did not say I read them. I just noticed you have been texting a lot with someone named Sophie lately. You had never mentioned her. She rolled her eyes. Dan, seriously? She is just a friend. We do yoga on Thursdays. That is weird. I thought you had quit those classes months ago. She looked at me as if I were something stuck to her shoe. Now you are controlling my schedule. What is this, an interrogation? I said nothing. I let her talk. She got up, murmuring, God, sometimes you are exhausting. That phrase stuck with me. Not because of the lie, I already knew that, but because of the tone. As if I were the problem. As if she were tired of pretending to care. That weekend I met with my lawyer. We had worked together before on business matters, so he knew I got straight to the point. I showed him everything. Photos, records, dates. He only asked me one question. Do you want to activate the clause? I nodded. And since the house was in my name before the marriage, it was still mine. The same with the car. The prenuptial agreement had protected everything, so I asked him to discreetly begin the divorce proceedings. I had not told Clara yet. Not because I wanted to make a spectacle, but because I preferred everything to be in motion before she knew. That same night we had dinner together. She was talking about possible vacations, and I already knew I would not be on that trip. I already knew she would leave all this with nothing. What hurt me the most was that she did not even notice that I was no longer the same person. I had stopped hugging her to wish her good night. I had stopped showing interest in her work, and she did not even flinch. The only person who seemed to notice anything was Clara's mother. One day she came by to drop off some things her daughter had lent her. She looked at me and, without saying much, as if asking if everything was okay. I just nodded. Everything is fine. She smiled and left. It turns out she was not just silently supporting Marcos. Susan, Clara's mother, also had her opinions, and she did not hide them forever. About 2 months before everything blew up, there was a dinner. It was just Clara, her parents, Marcos, and me. He arrived with a dessert, all smiles, and that carefree attitude as if he were also part of the family. I kept my cool, but during dinner, Susan dropped something. Or maybe she did it on purpose, wanting me to hear it. Clara and Marcos were talking about an art exhibition downtown, finishing each other's sentences as if they were a couple. Susan, smiling, leaned towards them. That is why I always said you two understand each other like no one else. I looked up. Marcos laughed as if it were a sweet joke. Clara did not even flinch, and then Susan turned to me with her wine glass in her hand and said, "No offense, Daniel, you are steady and practical, but Clara has always needed someone who speaks her language." That landed like a plate crashing on the floor. The father tried to divert the conversation with a joke about the weather. Clara stared at her plate. I said nothing, just looked at them one by one with a faint smile. The kind of smile you give before you remove someone from your life forever. Susan continued as if she had not just told me what she said. "You are good for providing stability, Daniel, but not everyone wants a routine life. Some people need passion." I did not respond. I went back to my plate and continued eating in silence. Inside, everything was already over. Later, in the car, Clara asked me if I was okay. I told her I was perfect, and it was true, just not in the way she thought. The house in the last few days seemed quiet. We were two strangers living under the same roof, leading parallel lives. She had no idea what was coming. I was not celebrating it, but I was not planning to warn her either. There was a strange peace in pretending everything was fine while everything was moving towards the end. I kept telling myself that I had already left, that only my keys hanging up and my toothbrush in the bathroom were left, that I was not angry, just tired, that there would be no need to argue or raise my voice. Just a folder full of evidence, a legal agreement, and a plan that gave me a false sense of control. I wanted to think I was being mature, rational, but deep down, a part of me wanted her to know, to feel it. The next thing would be the family barbecue. Clara thought we were going to eat hot dogs, chat for a while, share with the family, use paper plates and folding chairs, but no. For me, that day was marked as the end point. Everything was already decided. It was not impulsive, it was deliberate, like flipping a switch in the middle of a crowd so everyone could see the light. I did not enter that garden to socialize. I entered to end everything. Clara believed we would smile for photos, eat potato salad, and pretend everything was fine. What she did not know was that every gesture of mine, every word I said that day was not random, it was part of something bigger. She had no idea she was about to face the truth in front of everyone she trusted. I made sure she did not see it coming, not until it was too late. Every year, at the beginning of spring, Clara's family organizes a big gathering at her parents' house. For them, it is an unbreakable tradition. Her father is in charge of preparing the grill and the garden. Her mother cooks all the side dishes days in advance, and relatives who live less than half an hour away show up without fail. Some bring folding chairs, others come with children, dogs, or whatever. There is always music, overlapping conversations, laughter, cheap string lights that look nice when the sun goes down. I had been going since we started dating. I would help with whatever I could, setting things up, carrying coolers, chatting with her aunts. I was part of the landscape. Until that year, I was no longer just a guest. That time I had a different purpose. I had already submitted all the documentation. My lawyer had the papers ready, signed, and sealed. The only thing left was to tell her, but I did not want to do it at home, in a controlled environment where she could manipulate the situation, cry, feign confusion, or say I was exaggerating. I needed everything to come to light. Not for show, not for revenge, I just wanted it to be real. So when she asked me a couple of days before if I planned to attend her family's barbecue, I simply replied, "Of course." She smiled, pretending everything was fine. She gave me a kiss on the cheek and said, "I think this could do us some good." On the day of the event, I dressed as usual, jeans, a t-shirt, and sneakers. Nothing special. It seemed like any other weekend at her parents' house. Clara wore a summer dress I had given her a couple of years ago. I remember thinking how good it looked on her, and how little that mattered anymore. We arrived around 3 in the afternoon. Everyone was there. Her father was flipping burgers while complaining that no one had brought enough buns. The kids were running around with juice boxes in their hands. Everything seemed normal. Marcos showed up an hour later, around 4. He got out of his old Subaru, as if he owned the place. He gave Clara a hug that lasted longer than you would expect between friends. He did not even look at me. I did not react either. I did not make a scene. I just watched. Clara's mother, who saw me watching them, gave me a strange smile. The kind that says, "Yes, I know. And I do not care." The rest of the afternoon passed as usual. Potato salad, chairs on the lawn, background music from a portable speaker, the same old anecdotes. Clara and Marcos were inseparable. They laughed, shared food, whispered. They did not even try to be discreet. One of her cousins asked me how work was going. I gave a short answer and looked at Clara. She was leaning towards Marcos, showing him something on her phone as if I did not exist. That is when I knew it was time. Dinner started at 6. Everyone had their paper plates and plastic cutlery. Clara sat next to me, pretending everything was normal. Marcos sat across from her. Her mother, 2 seats down. We were halfway through our plates when her uncle, a nice man with no ill intentions, asked when we were going to give his parents grandchildren. Everyone laughed. Even Clara. She said, "Maybe when life gets exciting again." Then I put my fork down, sat up straight, and said in a clear voice, "Excitement. How about this? Clara has been sleeping with Marcos for months." The silence was absolute. The kind of collective paralysis where no one moves because they think they misunderstood. 5 eternal seconds passed. Clara dropped her fork. Marcos opened his mouth, but not a single word came out. Clara's mother blinked twice, dryly. Clara was the first to speak. "What are you saying, Daniel?" I did not even look at her. I turned to her mother. "I have messages, photos, locations, everything. And Susan, I know you supported them. So congratulations. Your daughter and her soulmate made it." Some relatives started shifting uncomfortably in their seats. One of the cousins stood up awkwardly. I turned to Clara. She was pale, trembling. She tried to say something, but I raised my hand. "You should also review Clause 7 of the prenuptial agreement," I said. "The court will contact you next week." And I went back to eating. She could not react. She just sat there in shock. Marcos got up and went inside the house. He disappeared. He did not even try to defend her. Susan finally broke the silence. She put a hand on Clara's back and said, "You deserve someone who understands you. Someone like Marcos." At that, I could not help but laugh, just once. It was not loud, just a sigh. Clara's father did not look up from his plate. Her brother muttered something and went into the garden. The atmosphere was suspended, as if no one could breathe. I finished my food, stood up, and said, "Thanks for dinner." Then I left. Without shouting, without drama, just with the truth. I did not go home that night. I had already rented a small apartment just in case. I had packed a bag a few days before. No luxuries, 1 bedroom, a quiet place far from the center. I had no intention of making a scene, I just needed distance. That night Clara sent me 8 messages. The first, "What was that?" The second, "Come home, we need to talk." By the 4th, she was already saying she had made a mistake, that I had humiliated her for no reason. I did not respond. I silenced my phone and laid down on the bed of that apartment. The silence enveloped me. There was no background noise, no perfumes floating in the air. I thought I would feel a void, but I did not. I felt free. The next day she called me. I did not answer. I did not need to hear her voice. I already knew everything. That night, she sent me a very long message. One of those texts that start with, "This is not who I am." She said she felt lost, that she had not planned to cheat on me, that it just happened. She added that she missed the early days, when everything was exciting, that Marcos understood her. Translated, she got bored, acted selfishly, and now wants to pretend it was a misinterpretation. I did not respond. My lawyer called me 2 days later. The divorce process had already been officially initiated. She received the envelope while she was alone. She tried to call him to stop everything and talk. He told her no and also reminded her of the contents of the prenuptial agreement. That is when everything changed. Many people sign those documents without thinking they will ever matter. I was not one of them. I had seen too many friends go through the same thing. I made sure everything was drafted with precision, with no legal loopholes. When Clara understood what that implied, she panicked. 5-paragraph messages, crying audios at 3 in the morning, even an email that just said, "Please do not do this." I did not respond to anything. She tried to go back to the house, but I had already changed the locks. Only my name was on the deed. I returned the car ahead of schedule and took a small penalty just to break the tie. As for the furniture, most of it was mine. The rest, inherited or gifts from my family, were protected by a clause that required their return if infidelity was proven. My lawyer had receipts for everything. In the end, Clara was left with her clothes, a few books, and a box of decorations from her studio. Nothing else. A mutual friend told me later that she was living with her mother. For a while, Clara's mother, Susan, tried to act as if everything was under control. She would tell anyone who would listen that I, Daniel, was too emotionally cold, that maybe Clara and Marcos were destined to be together from the beginning. She never liked me, that is a fact. She would greet me with a fake smile, but you could tell from her energy that she did not consider me artistic or passionate enough. I remember once she told Clara that I was too stable, as if that were a flaw. In the end, it seems she got what she wanted. Marcos got close to her family, at least for a while. I do not know if you know all the details, but yes, Marcos went to live with Clara at Susan's house for a week. They both had this strange fantasy that they could finally be together, as if they were a couple who had overcome all obstacles. But brother, that illusion shattered quickly. The truth is, Marcos was not looking for a life with Clara. What attracted him was the game, the secret, the drama. He liked what was forbidden. But when the excitement disappeared, when Clara no longer had a job, or an apartment, or a backup plan, then he changed his mind. Because guys like Marcos are not made to carry real weight. They love the chase, the fantasy, the stolen moments. But as soon as you have to turn on the lights and face the bills, they run. And that is what happened. One day he was there, and the next he disappeared without a word. He vanished as if he had never been there. That is what her cousin told me, and honestly, I was not surprised. Marcos was never prepared for the real consequences of what he had started. Shortly after he left, Clara sent me one last message. I lost everything, and he left me too. I do not know what to do, please. I stared at that message for an hour. I thought about replying. I considered writing something like, "You chose this." But I did not. I just deleted it. Some people tell me I was too cold, that I should have at least confronted her, that maybe with therapy we could have understood what went wrong. But the truth is, I did not need to understand anything more. I did not need her to explain her emotions to me. She knew what she was doing when she lied, when she snuck around, when she brought that man into our lives as if it were normal. I did not close the door on her, she destroyed it. So I decided to leave her with the consequences of her actions. No arguments, no shouting, no slammed doors, just silence. And it was that silence that finally broke her. A few days after that last message, I blocked her number. I did not do it out of anger. I was not angry. I just did not want to leave a door open for someone who had already left. And also because, to be honest, I did not trust myself to stay firm if I kept seeing her name on my screen. So I closed the chapter. Period. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. There were no legal disputes or dramatic scenes. She did not put up a fight. She could not. Everything was documented. My lawyer said it was the cleanest case he had seen in years. I signed the documents in a quiet office downtown. I was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. I did not look back as I left. It was done. A year passed from the divorce until I saw her again. I was not looking for her, but I was not avoiding her either. I had simply stopped thinking about her. My life had changed. New apartment, new routines, peace. I did not need more. That Saturday, I went to a small coffee shop on the other side of town where I used to go every weekend. It was quiet, with a good atmosphere and a decent espresso. I would sit near the window with a book or my laptop, watching the world go on outside while everything inside remained calm. I was in the middle of a chapter when the door opened and she walked in. Clara, the same way of walking, the same tense posture, trying to seem relaxed, but carrying something on her chest. She was thinner, but not in a healthy way. Her hair was pulled back hastily, no makeup, worn-out jeans, a large sweatshirt. It was not her usual style. For a second I just watched her. She had not seen me. She got in line, looked at the menu, wrung her sleeves as she used to do when she was nervous. I knew those gestures, all of them. When her eyes scanned the room and found me, she froze. That moment when someone is not sure if they want to run into you, but deep down they are hoping for it. That was her expression. I made no gesture. I did not look away. I stayed there, serene, firm, like a wall she was not prepared to crash into. She got out of line and walked towards my table. She stopped as if she had run into an invisible glass pane. I did not speak loudly or seem upset. I just remained firm. She swallowed, tried to speak, maybe to let out an "I am sorry" or a "Can we talk for a second?" But I did not even blink. "I am not interested in anything you have to say," I told her calmly without breaking eye contact. After that, I bought a new car, nothing fancy, just mine, with no shared memories. I went to Oregon for a week to a cabin, alone. I did not post pictures. I was not trying to prove I was okay. I was just alone. And that was enough. Work was going well. I started mentoring a couple of junior developers. I like helping without having to be at the forefront of everything. It makes me feel grounded. I even had a few dates, nothing serious. But they were respectful women, good conversations, no secrets. My family noticed the change. My sister says she sees me as more balanced. She does not ask many questions, and I appreciate that. Sometimes her kids come over, and I teach them basic programming concepts. I never thought I would be the cool uncle, but apparently I am earning that title. And you know what impacted me the most that moment in the coffee shop? At that moment, she understood that she had not only lost me, she had lost the man I was with her, the one who was warm, patient, protective. That person no longer existed, and she was not going to get him back with tears or explanations. She let him go when she opened the door to Marcos. I thought that would be the end of it. But of course, my life is never that simple because just when I had left everything behind, something unexpected happened. Final update. Hello, I wanted to share something unexpected that happened recently. I had decided to leave everything behind, to move on with my life without looking back, but last night something happened that stirred me up. When I got home, I found a simple envelope with no return address, carefully placed among the rest of the mail. Inside was a folded sheet of paper with a handwritten sentence. Not everything has come to light, and you know it. It had no signature or clear clues. The handwriting was not familiar to me. It was not Clara's, it was not Marcos's, it was someone else's. It could be a resentful relative, an acquaintance who found out late about what happened, or maybe just an empty attempt to make me uneasy. I do not know, but there it is, stored in my desk drawer. Not out of fear or nostalgia, but out of prudence. The explanations that never came no longer keep me up at night. I am not worried about what might still be unsaid either. I spent too much time looking for meaning in decisions that were not mine. Now I walk lightly, with my feet firm and my mind at peace. Whatever comes, will come. Whatever is said, will be heard if it deserves to be. I am not interested in opening old wounds. And if someone tries to stir up the past, they will find someone who no longer needs to justify himself or make space for someone who did not know how to stay. Because closure is not always a pending conversation. Sometimes the real end is when you realize you do not need anything more. And I have already reached that point.